What keeps all single parents stuck is the story that they're telling themselves about their own life. Most important thing that a single parent can do.
What can single parents do if they're stuck in guilt?
If a single parent is stuck in guilt, then the first thing they need to do is
Hello, and welcome to Finding Flow Parenting, the podcast where we help you to find more flow, ease, and joy in family life. With me, your host, Emily Hughes, conscious parenting coach and mum of two. Each week, I'll be joined by a special guest to explore a question posed by you, my lovely audience. Expect expansive reframes, tools, self-awareness, and a whole load of empathy. Parenting is a wild ride, but together, we've got this. So I'm really happy to be joined today by Orla Donoghue. She is a London-based single parent coach and founder of Solas Coaching, a platform dedicated to empowering single, solo, and co-parents. Following from her own experience of becoming a single mother in 2021, she created Solas Coaching, derived from the Irish word for light, to provide support, strategies, and a safe space for parents navigating similar challenges. So thanks so much for joining me on the podcast today, Orla.
oh my God, thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to speaking all the topics you talk about in this podcast. When you were doing the intro at the start about your podcast, I was like, oh gosh, what a calming space to be. I need this. So I'm glad to be here.
And I actually went on Orla's podcast a while ago. What's the name of your podcast?
It's Single Parent Reset is the name of my podcast. So yeah, it's all about life of a single parent, what the unique challenges are, and talking about how to actually overcome those challenges and live life a little bit easier as a single parent.
Great. So I'll put the link for that episode in the show notes at the bottom as well, so you can check that out. So our question today from one of our lovely listeners that we will be discussing. So I am a single parent. I feel constantly guilty, like I'm never doing enough. I just feel constantly drained and overwhelmed. How can I get out of this when I have such little support? So I can really feel the pain from that question. What's coming up for you, Orla, when you hear that question?
For me, it's that feeling of hearing her say, um, or the him, whoever it may be, say that I feel like I'm not doing enough. And I just want them to
Mm,
know that you absolutely are doing enough. I think so many times as single parents, it can feel like we are just failing on every single front because we've got so much weight on our shoulders. We've got the responsibility of so many different things. And it can feel like we're jumping all the balls and we're not doing anything to the standard we wanted to. But I
mm,
just want to remind you that you absolutely are doing enough. And sometimes it really can just be stepping back and recognizing all that you are doing that can help you kind of deal with, okay, actually giving yourself a bit of confidence and recognizing I'm actually holding all this together and have been for the last while.
mm,
And I think that can really help. And a term that I love to help with this is the term not single parent, but actually double parent, because you are doing the
mm.
job of two people as one person. And when you can start to recognize that and seeing that actually you're the head of your household, you're doing all the parenting alone, you are bringing the sole financial breadwinner for your household, you're holding the emotions of everyone in your household all on your own and not having that support of another person in the household, that's a lot. And when you can recognize that, that's when you can start seeking out that support that every single parent truly, truly deserves and recognizing that you are allowed to ask for support and it is okay to ask for it, which we can talk about in more detail because I know this is a huge barrier for so many single parents is even seeking support and getting it because they don't want to seem like they're being a burden to others or is asking for help a sign of failure. It might be something that people think, but it's really, really important to recognize that asking for support is one of the most important things that you can do to help with these feelings of overwhelm, to help you manage all that you are doing.
Yeah, I'd never heard that before, but that makes so much sense, that term double parent, because really that's the truth of what it is. Um, and it kind of strikes me there, something you said there struck me around trusting in our worth. And when we feel like we are worthy and deserving of support, often then we're kind of better able to access it. Whereas I wonder whether there's a bit here of like conditioned thinking, whether people can get stuck in like the shoulds. I should be doing. What would you kind of say to that? Because I think that word should can really be a barrier from trusting
Mhm.
that you're doing enough.
hmm I think even as going back to your transition into, say, single parenthood, we all
Mm,
know about the transition into motherhood or parenthood in general and how it can have a huge impact on your identity, and it can really throw your identity into like up in the air. But actually, for many people, the transition into single parenthood is maybe unexpected. It was never what they had planned for themselves. And it can have a
mm,
huge impact on your confidence, and it can make you question everything, because suddenly the life that you thought that you were going to have for you and your family now looks completely different. And that's a lot. And that can take so much in your confidence and your own identity and your own value and your own worth. So it's really even recognizing actually there's been a huge shift in what my story is, what it was, to where I'm actually living it now and what my future does look like. So
mm,
recognizing that part is really important. And then when it comes to actually having the confidence in yourself to asking for help, I think where loads of single parents can get stuck is like, okay, well, I feel like I've absolutely failed here because my family does not look like how it looks. So I'm just going to have to do this all myself. I need to just be hyper independent. I need to just do everything myself because I've failed at one thing. I cannot be now asking for help in others because I've made a mess of my life. First of all,
mm,
you have not made a mess of your life. I'm just saying this is very common thoughts that I know that comes up with the
mm,
clients that I
mm,
work with. But this can be how you're feeling. And actually, it's recognizing that, okay, things have happened, whatever has happened. Your life's now taken a different turn. Your family setup now looks different. Doesn't mean you failed. You've done absolutely nothing wrong. And actually, what is so important is recognizing that, because from there, then you will not be then putting on this mask, putting on this front, trying to make sure that everything's okay, or you look like you're absolutely fine. But maybe you're not. Maybe you're not okay. And it's okay to say you're struggling. It's okay to say you're finding this hard. And it's being more comfortable with doing that is what I'd say is a really, really important thing, because it can be something that maybe in the early days, everyone's around to support you as a single parent and
mm,
people are helping you out with certain things. But sometimes actually it can be like 5, 10 years down the line. And particularly if you separated when your children were young or you became a solo
yeah.
parent by choice, it can still be hard. I mean, you're still doing all those roles of a double parent, and it's actually learning to seek out the support then when you're still finding it hard, knowing that's okay. Just because, it's been years since you separated and all the support's kind of dropped away doesn't mean you still don't need it. So it's been able to build up that support network around you is really important. And also, the more you ask for support, it can really deepen connections with other people, because it's quite a vulnerable thing to be asking for
Mm,
help with someone. So it's almost reframing asking for help as like actually asking for connection with others. And maybe you can't offer the like for like support back to them right now because you are time poor at the moment, but you can help people in other ways. And knowing that
mm.
just because you can't offer that like for like help, know that you can offer it in other ways. Maybe not even now, maybe it'll be in a future season of your life, you'll be able to help these people. But yeah, there's some things that can help.
Yeah, I love everything you've said there, and it sort of strikes me, this hyper independence thing, which I've definitely seen in a lot of my clients. It's almost like I'm going to prove my worth. I'm going to prove my capability by being hyper independent. But in a way, one way of thinking about it is it's sort of in a way a bit of like good girl, good boy conditioning. Um, like look how I'm thriving, and it actually strikes me that I really like the phrase, like, you get to curate the life that you want to live.
hmm
Like, you're in charge. You
hmm
get to create it. And in a way, I wonder whether there's perhaps even you tell me, because obviously, as we were talking before the call, like I don't have the lived experience of being a solo, or as you say, double
hmm
parent. But yeah, I wonder whether there's almost like an increased opportunity of you choosing to live a lifestyle that really serves you, that really serves your values, because you're getting to make the rules and you're not having to, like in your own home, when your child is there, you're getting to curate and construct a lifestyle that really aligns with your values,
hmm
and you don't really have to compromise on that with anyone in your own home.
hmm
Um, So I wonder whether there's a way to kind of redefine your metrics of success. If you've got this narrative in your head that says, I'm failing against these shoulds, well, maybe it's an opportunity to go, well, actually, what would success look like to me? Like, what
Mhm.
lifestyle do I want to live?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you touched on something there that is so important because a lot of the time we can focus on all the negatives of a situation when you're a single parent, but oh my God, there's so many positives. And one of the ones, as you've said there, is you are in control of everything. Everything is on you. Yes, that can be stressful, but also everything's on you to choose how you're going to do it, which is
Mm,
amazing. So it's totally up for you to as to how you want to navigate your life going forward. Okay, certain things are out of your control still. Like for example, I co-parent, so my son goes to his dad's half of the time. I can't control that, but I can certainly control the time when I have my son and how we live our lives and what I do
mm,
and the time we have together. And it's amazing. When you take away the energy of having to navigate with someone else in your household and you get to just navigate you and your children and what even down to, and it can be hard thing to come to terms with because actually some of the work I do with some clients is actually to help them recognize, are you still doing patterns that you actually no longer need to be doing anymore, but they're
mm,
just so attached to that old life you have. And it's learning to let go of those patterns and thinking, okay, that doesn't serve me anymore, and actually what can I do going forward? And this could be down to simple things like you used to shop at Tesco but now actually you want to try at Sainsbury's. And it's just the
yeah,
empowerment that can come from doing that
yeah,
because maybe it's like your ex-partner, they love Tesco or whatever for whatever reason.
yeah.
Well, actually, for you now, oh, I'm going to try Sainsbury's and using it as this time and the transformation actually as well for single parents that happens. Like anyone who's been through a divorce or separation, I cannot tell you, it's a gift to be given because it's your opportunity to really look at your life and transform it to whichever way you want. I mean, when else are we really
Mm,
truly given that to actually
yeah.
be given the tools to just go for it and live our lives how we want to? And yes, like I said, there's certain things we can't do. Maybe you're in a certain like your financial situation or where you're living, certain things like that you can't change, but the environment you're living in, the home that you're creating, how you want your home to feel. And like you said, Sarah, there, a success metric. A success metric, maybe it isn't having a tidy house. Maybe it's going to bed and feeling like you were truly connected with your child that night. Or maybe it isn't having, your children looking absolutely immaculate, wearing the most perfect, well, it was World Book Day recently. So, having the
Mm.
most perfect World Book Day costume, but maybe it's the time we spent with them in the evening and having a fun chat about how their World Book Day was. So it really is just forgetting about what everyone else is thinking because everyone's so busy in their own lives doing their own thing. They're not thinking about you. So stop thinking about them and just focus it on you, your world that you're creating, and take this opportunity and make it something for yourself.
And something that comes up for me from that is I was working with a client recently who is parenting by herself, and we really stripped down to the bare basics what was required of her in her role as a mother. And it was actually quite an interesting idea because she'd put so much expectation on herself. And then she was sort of felt like she was failing at all of these different things. And when we stripped it down, she identified that the three things that were most important for her were to listen to her children, um, to coexist calmly with her children,
Hmm.
and to hold space when they had big emotions. And I thought that that was really neat and tidy. That
Hmm.
those were the three core things. And I use this analogy of a cake.
Hmm.
And it's like for her, those three things are her cake.
Hmm.
And anything else she does is just icing on the cake. But if
Hmm.
she's got a solid cake, that's enough. And yeah, I wonder what you'd add to that around like finding your core, finding your cake.
Yeah.
Your
I think it's really getting clear with yourself what type of parent you want to be going forward. So for me, again, because I co-parent, I was like, okay, I'm now going to be in a co-parenting situation. I'm going to make that the best version of co-parenting for me. So actually thinking, what is the best version of a parent for you? And getting really clear, actually even getting a pen and paper and writing it down. And then questioning yourself and asking, is this truly coming from me? Or is this coming
uh,
from my past, how I was raised, or how I'm seeing friends and family do it? If no one was watching, if no one could hear what I was saying, what is my perfect version of parent? and go with
Mm.
that. Because a lot of the time, the first answer might be, I don't know, my kids are always happy, always perfectly dressed, their rooms are tidy, they're always doing all the arts and the crafts and everything. But actually, maybe that's just, we've been conditioned from society and all these different things. So it's getting to the core of, if no one's watching, if no one was, keeping an eye on how you were parenting in your household, because no one is, what would you do? And also, I think as well, and this is where it can be really hard for single parents, which is really challenging, particularly if you actually know, not even if you have young children, just in general, there's no one there watching you parent. So no one's
Mhm.
actually there to see those moments where you actually do the really nice thing, or no one's there to see when you really mess up and it was really hard. And it can
Yeah.
feel extremely isolating experience because you don't have that someone at the end of the day to share that nice story with, or for someone to be like, oh my God, that bedtime sounded horrendous. Are you okay? So it can be really, really hard. So that's why it's so important to get really clear on what your parenting values are and getting them. I like yours are more kind of, like you said, abstract. They're more about feeling and how do you want to be feeling, and working towards those rather than tangible things, because the tangible things they're going to fall, and that's where overwhelm can start being driven because suddenly the beds aren't all made, the washing hasn't been done, all of that. So yeah, I think it's really important for single parents to get really down to their core values, what's important for them, in terms of their parenting and in terms of how they want to feel as a parent, because it's just really important. Because otherwise, if you don't have that as your anchor, then it can just, that's when it feels like you're floundering and everything's going wrong. And then when you have that on, like I said, when days are finding it hard and you are by yourself, you can at least be like, okay, I did this part of the cake today. It's okay.
Do you think then that there's a sort of extra need for parents who are parenting by themselves for this to be able to speak about their experience with others if they're not getting those conversations like with a partner? There's
Hmm.
maybe like a need really because shame thrives when we feel isolated and alone.
Hmm.
And it strikes me with some of the clients that I've worked with where they're perhaps more vulnerable to shame if they're by themselves,
Yeah.
not having this space to normalize some of the things and put them in perspective.
Yeah. No, I think it's so, so important that, I mean, the most important thing as a single parent is that you're getting that connection through your friends or your family or your, at the school gates, whatever it is, seeking it out, because it is a very isolating experience being a single parent. So it really is making sure that you're maintaining relationships. And it doesn't mean you need to be available every single night, because let's face it, you're not. But it's just like, even if it's just sending a WhatsApp to someone or picking up the phone call and things like that, and being open about your parenting experience. And okay, maybe a lot of the people in your social group aren't actually also single parents, but if they're parents as well, it is a very common lived experience parenting. So for me, even I know, for example, if I've had a really tough time with my son and then I'll meet up with my NCT group, who I'm still really good friends with, oh my God, it's like, it's a weight off my shoulders, because all the complaints that I'm thinking I'm doing wrong and I'm
Yeah.
telling myself it's because you're a single parent, this is all a problem. They all have all the same problems. All of their kids are doing the same thing. So it really is putting yourself out there, making sure that you're talking to other people and not thinking people are going to think less of you for how you're speaking. Other people will be delighted that you've shared your story because you've opened the floodgates for other people to be like, oh my God, me too.
Yeah.
Because I promise you, you are not the only one who's struggling with parenting. It is a very, very hard job. And it's also hard if for people who are coupled up traditional family setups as well as single parents. Single parents has got its different challenges. But when it comes to feeling more confident or connected in your parenting, that's where you can be seeking out other friends to really getting that support there.
Yeah. But it's kind of vulnerable to do this, particularly if you're maybe don't have that already inbuilt in. Let's say you're in like a in an area where you don't have family nearby, or
Yeah.
you're having to sort of put yourself out there
Hmm.
to maintain to get these relationships. And I almost think sometimes when you become a parent, friendship is a bit like you're starting school again,
Hmm.
and it's sort of like you're in year seven, again, and you're like finding these people who you really desperately need. I think friendship is so key for
Hmm.
us within friendship, but I think it can also be quite hard as well. And it strikes me as well that, there's this idea of like unicorn friends, which
Hmm.
I really like. It's friends who have children of a similar age, who live in a similar area, but then crucially, it's parents who share the same values as
Hmm.
you as well. Because you can be in a group of parents talking about parenting, but if they don't share the same values as you can end up feeling worse
Yeah.
than when you started.
Yeah, and I think as well for single parents, what's really useful is we mentioned the unicorn friends, and I think it's really
Mm,
hard to find that. So actually, what's brilliant to single parents is creating like a myriad of friends. So you can have the friend
mm,
who's a single friend, who you can
yeah,
talk about being single, what that's like. You can be the friend who's also a single parent, so you can talk about the challenges of what it's like to go through single parenthood. And then you can have the friends who have aligned parenting values. Now, this is all sounding very exhausting, and also knowing that it's making sure that you're finding out what one you are seeking at the moment right now. What's the one that's most important to you, and being able to seek that person out and not putting so much pressure on yourself to keep on top of all of the different friends and everything, because that can feel exhausting as well. But knowing that as well for you to get the connection. People aren't going to come knocking on your door. People aren't going to know that you're really struggling on a Sunday evening by
mm,
yourself. So it's actually really knowing that there is an element of you having to put yourself out there. And if you want to create the connection and everything, you do need to be putting yourself out there. So going back to the importance of knowing what you'll benefit from it. You will feel more connected to others, you will feel supported, and it is worth it for you and your children to have a household where you feel connected because you matter too. There's no point you spending all this time arranging play dates for your children, arranging them to have the most amazing social life if you're just forgetting about yourself. And
yeah,
play dates is a great place to actually start as well, because try and have play dates with parents, you get on with them and actually stay on with the play date. Don't do the drop off. Actually just stay and hang out with the parents. Or
mm,
if you don't get on with the parents, use the time then while your kids are at the play date to go off and do your own thing and meet your friends. So be more
yeah.
strategic about things like that. Yeah.
And that kind of takes us on to so friendship is one way to get your needs met,
Yeah.
but how can single parents try to get their needs met? Because there's an extra challenge here of, as you say, being sort of pulled in different directions, doing the work, doing the double work, as you said. So, what would you say to a single parent who's really struggling to tend to themselves?
Yeah, I think first of all is well, like we said, recognizing first of all that you're doing, and understanding overwhelm and actually the drivers of overwhelm, because there's a few different ways to look at it. So you can be overwhelmed because of all of the mental loads, so all of the thinking of all the planning you need to do, so planning in the play dates, replying to that message, thinking about the work emails, and then you can also be overwhelmed from the actual doing of the things. So actually bringing yourself to school, like bringing the kids to school, getting yourself into the office, cooking the dinners that they're doing. And then also there's the emotional overwhelm. And this is the one that can be very heavy for single parents, but does not even get addressed because you're so busy with the mental, the practical overwhelm. And this is where you've got the feelings of shame, the feelings of guilt that you're just not doing enough, guilt that your children aren't in a traditional family setup, feeling like you failed. This is where all of these sit. And these, when they're unaddressed, they can amplify the other areas, feel so much harder because you're carrying around this big sack of all this negative emotions that can just make things feel so hard. So it really is about breaking it down and understanding actually, where is my overwhelm coming from? Am I finding doing the school drop off so hard because actually I had a really difficult conversation with my co-parent this morning? I'm now spiraling,
Mm,
and actually giving yourself the space and the grace to actually sit with your emotions and understand your emotions and start to be curious with your emotions, and really, really getting in your head and listening to what your head's saying. Because a lot of the time you will notice it's quite a negative narrative you're saying to yourself. And get into the habit of hearing that narrative and thinking, if a friend came to me and was saying that, what would I say? Because why on earth am I saying that to myself? And there'll be many reasons. It could be from your childhood, it could be from what happened
yeah.
with your separation. But getting really clear as to looking at that inner dialogue that's going on in your head when things go wrong, when things go right, and checking, is this positive? Is this helping me? Is this going to be moving me forward? And checking in on that. So that can be really useful. And actually, also, the other thing I would say is recognizing that the most important person, and a lot of parents don't want to hear this because they're like, this, what? But I'm like, the most important person in your life, it is you. because you are holding everything together. And I always think about this theory of like, if you were getting on a plane and if you knew the pilot had been on a night out the night before and was really, really tired and exhausted, and then he was going to be flying you somewhere, you wouldn't feel comfortable. And essentially, you're the pilot of your life and your whole family. So you need to be giving yourself the rest. You need to be giving yourself the time to recover from those hectic days. So, and it doesn't need to be big, massive things. It can be small, intentional moments, but it's being intentional where you're going to sit down and have a cup of tea and just enjoy that cup of tea rather than like while the tea is brewing, you're frantically putting the washing in, you're doing other things, you're trying to do, you know what it's like. It's amazing how much you can get done while the kettle's boiling, but actually stopping all of that and just sitting and being intent with your time and knowing that you absolutely matter. You need to be doing this. And one, it's for you, but also it is for your children. And it's so that you can show up as your best self. And so that when you are doing those other things that are exhausting and are all sitting on you, that you actually feel like you can handle them a little bit more. So yeah, I would say it's a two-pronged approach. Like one is recognizing the emotional overwhelm and really sitting with that in your inner dialogue. And then also it's just telling yourself that self-care isn't selfish. It's okay to be looking after yourself and find those intentional moments where you're putting you first because you matter too. And model this for your children. Let them
Yeah.
see you sit and rest and look after yourself because you don't want them to, I don't know, be taking on the burdens that you're all taking on or seeing like their version of a mother as someone who's just frantically running around exhausted all the time. Do you want them to be seeing that? Maybe you do. Maybe that is a high value for you. Everyone's different. But yeah, just thinking about
Yeah.
what type of parent you want them to be seeing modeled in front of them and how can you get closer to that?
Yeah, I love that. I love this idea of being the pilot of your life. And it strikes me that it's a bit like ruthless prioritization. And that when you model living a good life in yourself, that's a real gift to others. And one of the things I'm often coaching parents into is, are you having any fun? And actually, how wonderful it is to model to your children you having fun,
Hmm.
because ultimately we want that for our kids. And fun is actually really resourcing to the nervous system, and it's really resourcing to feelings of overwhelm
Hmm.
as well. Um, so yeah, I love this conversation. So I'm just going to kind of sum up a few bits
Hmm.
from it. Yeah, so I really like this idea that we said about like the double parent, and really sort of moving from feeling like you have to do it all, this hyper independence, to moving to really you're in charge of your own life
Hmm.
and you get to curate a narrative that works for you and that serves you and that feels really aligned and that really you're in charge. I think that's maybe one of the big messages from this, and how much more empowering of a narrative that is to maybe sort of a narrative of more like you're on the back foot
Hmm.
to actually I'm in charge. I'm a
Hmm.
leader in my own life. And like you said, looking at the opportunities of this, I can already feel just in my body, like speaking about it. I don't have the lived experience of this,
Hmm.
but like just speaking about it, like my body feels a little bit like it's got a bit more energy
Hmm.
speaking about those things. So I can imagine some of the listeners will feel like that as well, sort of changing the energy
Hmm.
in which you approach this. So, if people want to find out more about how to work with you, yeah, how do you work with clients? I'm assuming you do like one on one work with clients and you go into corporates, you were saying?
Yes, so I do one-to-one coaching. I do either online or in person. And yeah, so you can find me there. And then also a huge passion of mine is going into workplaces and having workplaces be supportive and inclusive for single parents. Because I think we're in a world now where workplaces are being so progressive with their family-friendly policies and everything. But a lot of them are based on the assumption that there's another parent at home. And that's not the
Yeah.
case. And I know for me,
Mm.
I certainly faced burnout in my corporate career and had to walk away from a career I absolutely loved. And I don't want that to be the case for other single parents. I also am very vocal on LinkedIn, so you can find me on LinkedIn as well, talking about all the work that I do in workplaces as well. But yeah, everything's on my website, which is probably the best place to go check me out, where you can see about my one-to-one coaching and the corporate stuff that I do. And my podcast as well is also a great place to find out more about me and hear what I'm all about.
Great. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast, Orla.
Thank you for having me.